Good morning, everyone. Hope you're doing well. So, I was surprised that Piers Morgan re-invited Andrew Tate for a discussion over Elon Musk and free speech. Let's watch this interview quickly together.
Well, joining me now is Andrew Tate, whose videos have been viewed billions of times online, but he's been banned from pretty much every mainstream social media platform, including Twitter. Andrew Tate, welcome back to Piers Morgan Uncensored.
I think there was a video of Andrew Tate saying, "Yeah, we are back to social media after Elon Musk got it." So I'm not sure about that.
Your take on this, I think, is quite interesting because you've been a victim of being, if victim's the right word, but you've been removed from social media platforms for your opinions. Elon Musk has dedicated himself, he says, to restoring free speech. Do you think that's going to include you, for example?
I don't think it matters if it includes me or not. I think what's important is that free speech is the number one weapon against absolute tyranny. And although you cannot have complete free speech because then conversations completely break down into asinine insult fests, I do like the idea of the changing of the guard when it comes to control over information.
Imagine if there is a solution implemented in all social media that nobody can say any opinion about anything unless he is educated, well touted in that subject. Other than that, you are not allowed to say anything. That would be interesting. Like, if I don't know anything about medicine, I should not be spouting nonsense about, for example, COVID-19. That would be interesting.
Is it possible, Andrew Tate, to actually police something like Twitter, to be a platform for genuine free speech? Or is it so toxic and tribal now that whatever happens, before we had all people...
I want to interrupt here. It is impossible unless you hire people or you can have a new AI algorithm that can filter out sentences based on, for example, the opinion, based on what's happening in the world and keep updating itself. Other than that, they will always have key phrases, keywords, and stuff like that are the filters which will cause the people to get banned and so on. Other than that, it's not possible.
On the right screaming away that they were being no platformed and so on. Now you've got all the people on the left screaming that they're being diminished in some way. It's very tribal, very toxic. Can Musk cut through that? And if so, how?
Yeah, it's going to be extremely difficult. There's always going to be one group of people who are extremely unhappy, but I think that anybody who's perspicacious enough to understand the truth of what's been going on in the world recently will know that the left and their narratives have certainly been protected for a very long time.
Liberalism in general.
And the universe has swings and balances, and God often restores balance to the universe, and perhaps it might swing the other way for a while. I truthfully am a person who believes that all points of view are extremely important, because as soon as you block points of view, you have absolute tyranny.
And in a way, it's sort of self-defeating, isn't it? Because you carried on getting huge attention. It was interesting to me that when you came on the show, for example, we've had, I think, nearly 6 million people have viewed the whole interview that we did, which is a huge number of people, certainly far higher than watched it on conventional television. So you have a whole world out there online which operates away from social media platforms.
Yeah, I've been very, very successful in spite of them, but not many people can do that. I'm in a pretty unique position, but I think that everybody needs a voice to a degree, and social media platforms.
The funny part is, I think he knew it was coming, so he prepared all of the other ways to communicate before he got banned. So it was like he was preparing.
Now the most important platforms on the planet. They control information and they influence real-world decisions, and they influence people's perception of reality. The last few years of COVID have been a perfect example of what happens when you censor one side of the argument and you only allow one point of view to be purported by the matrix in and of itself, and that's how you end up in tyrannical situations.
Very strong arguments.
We were just discussing that, Piers.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfectly valid point. People have quite rightly held me to task over some of the positions I took during the COVID pandemic, notably when the scientists said as a definitive fact that you couldn't transmit the virus if you had the vaccine. It turned out that wasn't true.
Okay, so here there is an interjection. So Mr. Pierce, during the COVID, he was talking rubbish to anybody who's against the vaccine or against anything related to COVID. And once you are in the influence position where you speak to millions of people and you say your opinion, you are forcing or you are shaping the people opinion that, okay, this guy is right because he's been backed by the science. These guys don't know what they are talking about, and that's because the other idea is suppressed. So before you take a stance in the future about, okay, COVID, if you don't take COVID, you are not allowed to walk on the street. The jab, you are not allowed to walk in the street. You are not allowed. You need to get educated before you state your opinion because you are not a medical person, and that is where having an influence or having this platform is very difficult and it is very scary.
And I based my observations on that supposed fact and said, right, well, in that case, if you refuse to be vaccinated, you shouldn't get the same rights as people who've been vaccinated.
Take that, for example.
If you're unjabbed, you can pass it on. It turned out, actually, there's not much difference whether you've been vaccinated or not. And at that point, I changed my mind. But I felt that there were a lot of people who were being deplatformed from Twitter at the time for questioning the validity of scientific statements, and they would then be a complete U-turn. So I do think it was a very interesting period.
There was actually anybody who says anything that makes sense, even doctors, that they were saying, okay, this does not work, this does not work, what they said is not true, you should not be affected because of 1, 2, 3. Everybody was silenced. Some of them even lost their jobs, by the way. And it's crazy. And just to tell you, I got COVID a couple of times. My mother got it a couple of times. I did not feel it. Like literally, it was like a fever that went down in like 5-6 hours. But I nearly lost my mother with COVID. So it is there. It's not like I'm denying that there is COVID. But it's not what they were telling us. That's what is wrong. What's not right. I did not take the vaccine till now because there was no way for me to get forced to take it. So it was always optional for me take it or not take it. So it was an option, so I did not take it because there was something wrong in the argument and I never felt safe taking it. Because if you are trying to force somebody to take something so hard, you're blocking all other ways to think, there is definitely something wrong. That's my stance. I'm not a medical guy. I don't know anything about medicine, but I know common sense in a way that if somebody is trying to force all the people to do something by every means possible, there is definitely something wrong there, and I did not do it. It might be not, it just might be my intuition, but who knows?
Actually, for testing what free speech means.
It was actually worse than that. You're right, Piers, but it was actually worse than interesting, because what happens is when you censor an entire side of the argument and only allowed one side of the argument to have a voice, you are changing reality in real time. You are shaping the world. The only reason that scam continued as long as it did, and the only reason people didn't get to see their own parents get buried, and the only reason people sat and missed cancer appointments because they were scared of the common cold was because they were censoring anybody who said anything contrary to the purported version of events that the mainstream media decided they want the entire world to swallow. It's beyond simply interesting, and it's beyond simply funny or coincidental.
Yeah, I mean, I will challenge you on one thing. It's not the common cold, right? COVID-19 has killed 6.6 million people. It is one of the most deadly viruses, certainly of our lifetime. So it wasn't the common cold, but I do think it is completely justified for people to say we should be more cautious, I think, about accepting during fast-moving pandemics the word of scientists as being sacrosanct, because on a number of things, from the use of masks to the efficacy of vaccines in preventing transmission, they did massive U-turns.
I've read enough history books to know that the people who do the censoring are never the good guys. And they've been censoring a lot of arguments for a very long time in the name of good. They are weaponizing virtue, and it's always in the name of tyranny. Anybody who is out here trying to silence an entire side of an argument on any subject, whether it's COVID-19, immigration...
I'm sorry, he came prepared, it seems. It was like, we are talking about the subject, come prepare your speech.
Anything else, they are the evil people who are out for absolute mind control of the populace. And they should be feared.
I certainly agree that I think the healthiest thing for any democracy is for all views to be aired and debated. We seem to have lost the ability to debate. You know, when I interviewed you, yeah, we had a few fractious moments, but actually, I thought it was a pretty spirited debate between people who perhaps had, you know, preconceived views of each other. And I've got no problem interviewing you now about these because I think you have an interesting take on this stuff.
And that's the key to life. When you reach that level of adolescence in your mindset where you can't handle any point of view that is contrary to your own, then you're truly a broken person. And that's what the internet is purporting. It's very interesting you said about Twitter being tribal. There's a large contingent of people on Twitter who simply cannot handle reading an opinion which differs from their own. And that is a degree of immaturity that we do not need adults to be functioning with in the modern world.
No, I agree. If you were Elon Musk, this idea of charging $8 now a month, whatever it is, to access the blue tick premium Twitter account, would you do that? Would you pay the extra?
I think that social media companies for a very long time have lived in an absolute fantasy where they've printed money from thin air by charging people for pixels, and they grew into these large conglomerates with too many staff sitting around doing nothing, having coffee breaks. And Elon Musk is a businessman. He's walked into the office and he's firing a bunch of people who are messing around doing nothing, and he wants his business to make money, as it absolutely should. And how he decides that happens is his prerogative. I don't see why we should sit and accept that a website needs 200,000 people sitting around discussing in long meetings, sitting on beanbags about policy of human rights of some garbage, when he's come along and said, no, I'm a businessman. We're going to charge for our service. We're going to reduce the number of staff. And we're going to be a functional, coherent company, as they should be. And it's his prerogative to do it, as he's bought the company. I think he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, because I remember the appalling censorship of the New York Post exclusive about Hunter Biden, the son of the president, about his laptop. This is 3 weeks before the election that Joe Biden won. He was heading, you know, to a possible...
That was very interesting, by the way.
And that story, they reckon, could have tipped it either way. But it was completely suppressed and censored, starting with Twitter, then Facebook, then others. Twitter literally locked out the New York Post account for 2 weeks for breaking a completely true story. And I thought that was shameful.
It's worse than shameful. It's worse than shameful. When you control information, you control the real world. They affect the real world in real time. They are genuinely affecting the reality people live in. They are not just a company. They're not just a social media platform. It affects absolutely every single person on the planet when it changes who is elected. I don't want to comment specifically on Hunter Biden or the laptop. I would never kill myself. But I don't think it's fair that they would hide certain key information that close to an election. And the fact that they've done that was done specifically to affect the world that we all live in. And we all have to suffer the consequences of those things. So to sit and say that these companies can just do whatever they want and they're private, etc. No, free speech is beyond important for democracy. It's important for the reality that we exist under.
So here I just want to interject quickly. So it's not just the social media platform. Like any information you find on the internet, right, it holds be either true or wrong. Like, for example, if you find a story on Wikipedia page on Andrew Tate that he's doing human trafficking, he's doing this, he's doing this, he's doing that. For example, Wikipedia is known to be, for example, a factual website. Like, everything on it is true. But that's not the case, because there has been other cases where they've been asked to change what they have written on their profiles about certain people or certain things. So anything on the internet can be corrupted, and since all of our information is no longer on books, it's not written, anybody can change it just like that. So they can say, okay, we want to change the narrative about Andrew Tate. So everywhere on the internet, make sure he's mentioned as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and everybody started believing that without even watching his interviews. Like, he is now, anybody, if you see the interviews on the street, anybody you ask them about Andrew Tate, yeah, he is misogynist. Do you know what's misogyny? No, I don't know what's misogyny, but I heard them say that he's misogynist. But what the hell? You need to find the truth yourself. You need to research. You need to understand how to research yourself.
Andrew Tate, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it was over.
Thank you, Frank.
All right, so pretty interesting interview, honestly. I'm surprised, like, Piers Morgan, he's notoriously always on the other side. He never agrees with anybody. That is based on the internet, of course. So I'm surprised that they agreed, and the things that they agreed on are pretty interesting as well. So let me know what you think about this interview. It is good to see some people who can be outspoken and say what is really on their mind right now, because they are not afraid of being censored. So it's pretty interesting. Imagine all of these YouTube people, right? Whenever they say something about women, whenever they say something about LGBTQ, whenever they say something about anything, they are afraid of being censored. And based on that, they always be superficial with their comments. And if you are actually unafraid of being censored, you speak completely different. And this is where it becomes interesting, because a lot of these agendas or narratives being pushed forward so quickly, because if you say anything against it, you are homophobe, you are transphobe, you are this, you are that, you are not allowed to talk. They don't even know the definition of a woman. But again, it's just because of the censorship, everything is going wrong. Now, let's see people or a social media platform without censorship, how it will do. And see you on the next one.